हेलो व्हाट्सअप। तो क्या हाल चाल, आप सभी का स्वागत हमारी इस लाइव स्ट्रीम में। तो आज है हमारा फर्स्ट डे स्ट्रीमिंग का, तो देखते हैं कैसा सिनेरियो रहता है क्रिप्टोज में। वैसे अभी मैंने देखा था कि फॉरेक्स फैक्ट्री में अभी न्यूज बताई थी कि पोवेल की आज मीटिंग है। पता नहीं 10:05 पे फेड चेयर पोवेल स्पीक्स। अभी देखते हैं क्या रिजल्ट है इसका, किस लिए आज मीटिंग होने वाली है, ये प्रॉपर मुझे पता नहीं है, जो जनरली बोल रहा हूँ मैं। पोवेल स्पीक्स, व्हाई? कुछ तो है आज। पोवेल भाई आए हैं तो कुछ ना कुछ करके ही जाएंगे, ऐसे नहीं जाने वाले वो। स्पीच लाइव 10:02 पे स्पीच स्टार्ट होनी थी पोवेल जी की। बीटीसी अभी थोड़े दिन पहले ही रेट कट हुए हैं। उसका रिजल्ट क्या रहता है? अभी जो मार्केट है बीटीसी अभी एक रेंज में फंसी पड़ी है। मार्केट स्ट्रक्चर जो है प्रॉपर बेरिश है, लिक्विडेट हुए हैं बहुत ज्यादा अकाउंट्स, दिख रहा है यहाँ पे। और एक रेंज में फंस चुकी है मार्केट अभी। क्या पता ये पवेल की स्पीच के कारण हो सकता है, बट जब पवेल आते हैं तो फिर कुछ ना कुछ अच्छा ही देखने को मिलता है। न्यूज बेस्ड ट्रेड ज्यादा लिए जाते हैं इस टाइम पे। पवेल पवेल कहाँ हो सर? फेड रिजर्व चेयर स्पीक्स इकोनॉमिक आउटलुक।
See Claiborne Pell as the state's 46th United States Senator.
पुरानी स्ट्रीम है क्या ये? एक मिनट चेक कर लेता हूँ मैं थोड़ा सा। लाइव टुडे। और आज अगर किसी ने देखा हो तो भाई कितना बढ़िया मोमेंटम आया है बैंक निफ्टी में। सुबह मैं ट्रेड कर रहा था, एक अच्छा खासा ट्रेड मुझे मिला। और वो भी मेरा ट्रेड जो था एक ट्रैप की तरफ था, जो ट्रैप किया मार्केट ने आज सेलर्स को, उसको उसमें मेरी एंट्री प्लान थी। एसएल बहुत छोटे थे और टारगेट अच्छा खासा आज अचीव हुआ। स्पीच अभी स्टार्ट हो रहे, आए नहीं अभी।
In 1996, the people of Rhode Island elected him to succeed Claiborne Pell as the state's 46th United States Senator. He has worked every day since to help win the respect of his peers from both sides of the aisle. He is the senior member of the powerful Appropriations Committee, which controls the funding of the United States government, and has worked tirelessly to direct federal funding to the Ocean State. He is one of just 8 United States senators in the history of the United States Senate to graduate from West Point, and has used that knowledge as the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, where he's played a pivotal role in safeguarding our nation and growing Rhode Island's defense sector. As senior member of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, he has authored several key pieces of legislation, including historic Wall Street reforms, and has been a nationally recognized leader for his dedication to protecting U.S. consumers. Today, Senator Reid continues to use the lessons he learned growing up in Cranston, which were deepened in the Army and have been tested in the halls of Congress, and stands up and speaks out for hardworking families who are the heart and soul of this country. He is dedicated to the nation's security and ongoing prosperity. Senator, we are grateful for your support for this event, for the work of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, your advocacy for our members and their businesses, and for being a champion for our state, and putting into practice each and every day the values that you learned at that kitchen table on Pontiac Ave in Cranston. Senator Jack Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, for that extraordinarily kind introduction. I also want to thank Lori White for her great leadership and all the members of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. To all my colleagues in government, thank you for joining us here today. I want to particularly shout out to Susan Collins, the president of Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, an extraordinary public servant, and President Mark Palange of the University of Rhode Island. He has really taken a great university and made it even greater. Thank you, Mark. Today, I have a distinct honor. That is to welcome Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, back to Rhode Island. Along with many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I have long appreciated Chairman Powell's decency and steady leadership and commitment to the values that distinguish America from every other country in the world. He has the distinction of having been appointed by a Republican president and reappointed by a Democratic president. He has shown the courage to make tough decisions in an exceptionally challenging economic and political environment. And he has made these decisions based on the data and the facts and good analysis. And that is something increasingly rare these days. It feels like a much different world today than the last time Chair Powell addressed us in 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic brought substantial economic upheaval, including unemployment rates we had not seen for decades. That crisis was followed by a serious bout of inflation. And in fact, every economist, left and right, were predicting not about the coming recession, but how severe it would be. Because of Jerome Powell, there was no recession. Chair Powell deserves credit for navigating those choppy waters. Nevertheless, average Americans are still facing significant economic challenges due to the chaotic policy agenda of the current administration. Tariffs, health care cuts, a massive debt increase, and interventions in the operations of major corporations and universities have all proved disruptive and costly. Real wages for most American workers remain stagnant. We still have not fully tamed inflation. Roughly 36 million Americans are experiencing poverty, and housing is too expensive and in too short a supply everywhere, but particularly here. The policy chaos is extended into a direct assault on the Fed's independence and personal attacks by the president against members of the Fed. But Chair Powell has met these challenges with equanimity and professionalism. He understands that a strong and independent central bank can contribute to sound economic policy in this nation. He understands the impact that monetary policy has on communities and families and businesses. He has somehow managed to stay laser focused on achieving the Fed's dual mandate to achieve maximum employment and stable prices. Chair Powell, thank you for doing your job with honesty, integrity, and humility. I speak for all of us here. There are few examples of patriotic, decent dedication to the nation than Jerome Powell. And thank you for returning to the Providence Chamber during your final few months as Fed Chair. You are more than welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in welcoming Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell.
Thank you for your warm reception, and thank you, Senator Reid, for your very kind introduction. It is a pleasure to be back in Rhode Island. The last time I had the opportunity to speak to the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, as Lori mentioned, was in the fall of 2019, actually November 25th, 2019. And I said then, quoting, "If the outlook changes materially, policy will change as well." Well, little did any of us know, just a couple of months later, the COVID-19 pandemic arrived. Both the economy and our policy evolved dramatically in ways that no one could have predicted. Along with actions by Congress, the administration, and the private sector, the Fed's aggressive response helped stave off historically severe downside risks to the economy. The COVID pandemic came on the heels of the painfully slow, decade-long recovery from the global financial crisis. And these two back-to-back world historical crises have left behind scars that will be with us for a long time. In democracies around the world, public trust in economic and political institutions has been challenged. Those of us who are in public service at this time need to focus tightly on carrying out our critical missions to the best of our ability in the midst of stormy seas and powerful crosswinds. Throughout this turbulent period, central banks like the Fed have had to develop innovative new policies that were designed to deliver on our statutory goals during times of crisis rather than for everyday use. Despite these two unique, extremely large shocks, the U.S. economy has performed as well or better than other large advanced economies around the world. And as always, it's essential that we continue to look back and learn the right lessons from these difficult years. And that process has been ongoing now for more than a decade. So, turning to the present day, the U.S. economy is showing resilience in the midst of substantial changes in trade and immigration policies, as well as in fiscal, regulatory, and geopolitical arenas. These policies are still emerging, and their longer-term implications will take some time to be seen. Recent data show that the pace of economic growth has moderated. The unemployment rate is low but has edged up. Job gains have slowed, and the downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated. In recent months, it has become clear that the balance of risks has shifted, prompting us to move our policy stance closer to neutral at our FOMC meeting last week. GDP rose at a pace of about 1.5% in the first half of this year, down from 2.5% last year. The moderation in growth largely reflects a slowdown in consumer spending. Activity in the housing sector remains weak, but business investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from last year's pace, largely reflecting the AI build-out. As noted in the September Beige Book, which I bet you wonder what it is, the September Beige Book, that's a report that gathers qualitative information from across the Federal Reserve System. We'll talk about later. Businesses continue to say that uncertainty is weighing on their outlook. Measures of consumer and business sentiment declined sharply in the spring. They have since moved up, but remain low relative to the start of the year. In the labor market, there has been a marked slowdown in both the supply of and the demand for workers, an unusual and challenging development. In this less dynamic and somewhat softer labor market, the downside risks to employment have risen. The unemployment rate edged up to 4.3% in August, but has remained relatively stable at a low level over the past year. Payroll job gains slowed sharply over summer months as employers added an average of just 29,000 per month over the past 3 months. The recent pace of job creation appears to be running below what we call the break-even rate, that is the rate needed to hold the unemployment rate constant. But a number of other labor market indicators remain broadly stable. For example, the ratio of job openings to unemployment remains near 1, and multiple measures of job openings have been moving roughly sideways, not down, as have initial claims for unemployment insurance. Inflation, meanwhile, has eased significantly from its highs of 2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. The latest available data indicate that total PCE prices rose, that's personal consumption expenditure prices, that's the inflation measure that we follow most closely, rose 2.7% over the 12 months ending in August, up from 2.3% in August 2024. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.9% last month, also higher than a year ago. Goods prices, after falling last year, are driving the pickup inflation. Incoming data and surveys suggest that those price increases largely reflect higher tariffs rather than broader price pressure.